Sometimes there's this temptation to think that teenage gang wars in New York City in the 50s only affected the actual gangs themselves, that it was some sort of neat, self-contained warfare that it didn't affect the people around them. But this is not true, and I've come across many situations of innocent people caught in the crossfire or regular citizens that were attacked, robbed, beaten, or even killed. Today's story highlights how dangerous these gangs could be to regular New York citizens from that time period. Juan Maldonado was a heavy-set, 45-year-old Puerto Rican who lived with his wife and children at 240 Siegel Street. On November 9, 1957, at about 10 p.m., he left his home to get a pack of cigarettes from the corner store, the candy store. As he was returning home, he saw a group of black teenage boys huddling together and talking about something. But he paid no attention to them and continued to his house. Most likely he had seen that scene 1,000 times. He got to within a few feet of his home when he suddenly heard loud whoops that sounded like a charge of a wild pack of Indians. He turned around just in time to see a gang of about 20 youths running right towards him. One of them threw an ash can at him. Now this ash can just barely missed hitting Juan, but he did not miss the hard blow struck on the back of his head with a blunt object by one of the boys. As he fell to the ground, he felt a very sharp jabbing pain in his back. And it was at this point that some of the neighbors came running out of their homes because they heard what was going on. This scared off his attackers and they ran away. He got up from the ground and he walked into his home, and his wife found, believe it or not, a large ice pick sticking out of his back. She removed the ice pick like the good wife she was and took her husband to the Greenpoint Hospital. At the hospital, he told Detective Robert Carroll of the 87th Squad about what happened to him. And he said that he suspected his attackers were the gang that hung out at the candy store in the middle of the block that he lived on. Detective Carroll immediately rounded up a group of black teenagers who hung out in the candy store in the middle of the block for questioning. You see, on that particular night, there were actually 2 more stabbings on the block, and William Little Fox Fenner was involved with both of them. So keeping count, there's a total of 3 assaults to William's record on one night. There was the one on Juan Maldonado, and then the other 2 assaults, which I just mentioned, but I'm going to go into those in detail in a moment. Now, it wasn't until November 14, 1957, when William was picked up on Siegel Street and Bushwick Avenue for questioning in the assault on Juan. Now, he readily admitted that he stabbed Juan on the night of November 9 and said that when he questioned Juan whether he had been part of a group that had taken his friend from the candy store, basically a kidnapping, he didn't like the response that he got from him. Now, the fact that Juan was obviously a grown man and probably most certainly wasn't a part of a teenage war doesn't seem to matter to William, or maybe he didn't think about it. So William was taken to the 87th Precinct where he was booked for felonious assault. This was his second felonious assault within a month, inside a month. Now, as I said, William readily admitted to assaulting and stabbing Juan with the ice pick, as we just described. Now, he said that when he left his home on the night of the attack, he took the ice pick with him because he expected trouble from the Puerto Ricans in the neighborhood. Now, he claimed that for several weeks prior to the attack on November 9, he and his friends had a lot of trouble with the neighborhood Puerto Ricans. And what they would do is they would come around the block, start a fight, and then run away. So after leaving his home, he met some friends and he drank a bottle of liquor with them in a hallway on Moore Street. And he said that right after this he felt quite high, and so then he went to his hangout at the candy store at 205 Siegel Street when he was told by one of the girls that a group of about 30 Puerto Ricans had come into the store and snatched their friend Bates and took him along with them. So William and several of his friends ran down to the corner of Siegel and White Streets to rescue Bates from the group of Puerto Ricans who were on the corner. Now, as soon as they saw William and his friends approaching, the Puerto Ricans got scared and they scattered, leaving Bates behind. Now, William said that the reason the Puerto Ricans fled was because there was actually another group of about 12 others of his friends who were approaching from the opposite direction. Now, he said that one did not run away. Now, that was Juan, along with the other Puerto Ricans, and so he stopped to ask Juan whether he was one of the group of Puerto Ricans who had molested his friend Bates. He said that Juan was quite sassy with him and he didn't like the answer he gave, so he struck Juan on the head, knocking him to the ground, and then when Juan got up, William promptly stuck the ice pick right into Juan's back. Now, he blamed all of this aggressive nature and fighting on the fact that he had been drinking earlier the evening. Juan felt that William should be punished in order to teach him a lesson. Now, I don't blame him. And I'm sure that Juan's wife felt the exact same way, and probably his kids too. I can imagine how she felt seeing her husband walk into the family home with an ice pick sticking out of his back. So, as I mentioned before, Juan was taken to Greenpoint Hospital, and he was a patient there until November 15, 1957. Now, the hospital records show that he was treated for a stab wound of the right lumbar area and a laceration of the scalp. He was then discharged to the surgical clinic, where he still went for periodic checkups. Juan said that he still got periodic headaches and dizzy spells because of the blow to the head. He also said that he was unable to work for a period of 3 weeks, and he lost a total of $189 in earnings. He paid the medical bills because he had medical insurance from his union. I don't know what he would have done without that. He would have been perhaps destitute. Now, William admitted to being a member of the Latin Lovers, which is a local social club that met in the candy store at 205 Siegel Street, and they would sing and dance to a jukebox. But according to Detective Carroll, as well as William himself, this was not a store that sold anything. It was just a club in which they had a jukebox, and they would meet nightly to carry on, create disturbances, run through the streets, and assault people on the street. Now, since the attack on Juan, the club actually got shut down. And according to Detective Carroll, this hangout was a breeding place for all sorts of assaults and disturbances in the neighborhood. In fact, whenever there was a stabbing or any other type of assault in the neighborhood, the police would always go to 205 Siegel Street and round up the members of this club. And invariably, they would find the members of this club would frequently get drunk, and they would roam the area about 4 or 5 blocks radius, and they would pick on anybody they did not like, and they would assault them. Now, it's important to mention again that the 2 other people who were assaulted on the same night on the same block, and William was charged in both of those. Now, one of those charges was a felonious assault, but this was actually dismissed in Kings County Court. However, in the second charge, William was charged with assault along with 4 others because they attacked Oscar Bryant with their fists and feet. They also used a weapon on him, but unfortunately in the report I have about this, it didn't actually say what kind of weapon that they used. Now, I'm not sure what the disposition in this assault was, but it was officially a charge of 3rd-degree assault and a CDW, carrying a dangerous weapon. So, let's talk a little bit about William Little Fox Fenner. At the time of arrest, he was a 17-year-old black teenager who was making his first Kings County court appearance. William was a medium-sized youth. He was about 5 foot 5 inches in height, and he weighed about 140 pounds. He had brown eyes, thick black curly hair, and a dark complexion. Now, he readily admitted that for a period of about 5 years, up to the beginning of 1957, he was a member of the notorious El Quinto gang, who were engaged in numerous gang wars. Now, he admitted that he found that belonging to this club made no sense, and so he actually dropped out in the beginning of 1957. And he instead admitted membership in the Latin Lovers, but insisted it was only a social club and that they did not engage in gang warfare. I am very skeptical about this. It's a rather dubious claim because the Latin Lovers sure acted like the El Quintos with all the people that they assaulted in the neighborhood. Nevertheless, William blamed his viciousness in the attack because of his drinking, and he also said that there was a very strong racial rivalry in the area between the blacks and the Puerto Ricans, and that he purposely took the ice pick from his home earlier that evening because he expected to be meeting with the local Puerto Rican boys. William was described as a careless, irresponsible youth who didn't even care about his own personal appearance. He was an immature, unsophisticated youth with little cultural background and a poor manner of speech. However, he was able to express himself satisfactorily. Now, the school that he went to described him as being excitable, who took offense easily, and who lacked definite aims and did not respect the rights of other students. His mother was overly protective of him and said that he was always a good boy, and he never caused her any trouble. However, she did admit that she wasn't really aware of his activities outside of the family home. Now, none of these observations that I just shared with you are mine, and I actually got them from a written report about William after he was charged with assaulting Juan Maldonado. As is the usual refrain in these types of situations and many of the videos I have on this topic, William was a product of a bad home environment where he was raised with little or no parental guidance or supervision. His parents, they were constantly fighting each other, and they separated when he was 10 years old. Now, for a number of years, he lived with his mother, who lived with another man. Now, it appears that while living with his mother, he not only was not accorded any type of guidance or supervision, and I doubt any type of love, but the mother found her son burdensome to have around the home. And so she asked the father, from whom she separated from, to take the children off of her hands. So from that point on, William lived with his father, and he lived with another woman, and they gave little or no guidance or supervision to William. On February 11, 1958, William pleaded guilty to assaulting Juan and was sentenced to the New York City Reformatory. He was paroled just a few days before Christmas in 1958, and he went on to live with his brother. William immediately got employment, and in spite of disruptive home influence, he made a pretty good adjustment. He worked steadily, and he reported regularly to his parole officer, and he showed respect for authority. But this all went up in flames when he was yet again charged with assault in August 1959, which would require just another video to go into the specifics. I can say that the assault came out of the friction between blacks and Puerto Ricans, just like what happened in 1957. Now we're going to jump ahead a little bit. When in April 1970, William was arrested for selling 2 bags of heroin for $8 to an undercover agent of the Detective Division on April 17 and then once again on April 21. William admitted that he had been selling heroin for 8 or 9 months to support his own habit. All of the profits that he made went into supporting his own habit, since he required 30 to 35 bags of heroin per day for himself. Now, he said that because he snorted the heroin, it was necessary for him to use larger quantities than mainliners would use. Now, there was some sort of disability in one of his hands and arms, which made it difficult for him to use a needle and become a mainliner. I'm hoping that this fact, plus his arrest, saved him from a lifetime of addiction to heroin. And that's the last I know about William, and that's where the story ends. You know, I do hope he made it. I hope that all these guys made it. And I really appreciate the fact that you're watching this video, and if you made it all the way to the end, I doubly appreciate that. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a great day.